All right. Well, good morning. It is 9 a.m. straight up, and to respect your time and trying to keep this to an hour, I think we'll just get going. So, happy July 14th, and I appreciate you jumping in. This group is, it's been working hard, and I think the one focus that we've continued to keep on this is trying to keep in sight the focus of keeping Spokane and trying to get Spokane to be the cleanest and safest city in the U.S. And I think as long as we do that and keep the politics out, the BS out, we end up agreeing. And I do so appreciate all that have stepped in, participated, been part of this. We've seen a lot of action and I think and movement, and I appreciate it. And we have elected officials on here today that I think we're going to hear from, and they're all working. We're all working for what I think is best. Sometimes maybe the routes we take aren't necessarily the same roads, but at the end, we want the same destination, and that's the cleanest and safest city. So without any further ado, for those that are new on this, please know that this is like modeled after a neighborhood council. So if you've been to a neighborhood council, you realize that's like a smaller micro piece of the city council. And it's really to help the city and the agencies of the city to determine their priorities and their needs. So the group is up to about 500 on Facebook. We're over 300 on email distribution. So there is a lot of activity and a lot of involvement, and that's appreciated. We continue to try to take the education and advocacy route, I think, by being educated and really understanding, empathizing with all stakeholders at the table, that we can focus and come to common ground and being able to work together. And so we'll continue to communicate via email, Facebook. We're hoping to have a website. There's some other things that we're trying to do. Obviously, this is a grassroots group, and it's pretty organic with not much of a budget, like zero. So we're continuing to do what we can. With that, I want to recognize the elected officials that have been part of the group, and that from day one has been Councilmember Wilkerson and Councilmember Cathcart, as well as then we have our neighborhood resource officer, Tim Schwering. County Commissioner Josh Kearns has been involved, and then Brandy Peets, Deputy Mayor Brandy Peets from the Valley. So we appreciate that, and I think it takes all of us working together to do that. So without any further ado, I would like to turn it over to our neighborhood resource officer, Tim Schwering, who's been involved from day one and continues to be critical in the communication. So Tim, are you on? And if you are, would you mind just providing a quick update from your perspective on how things are going? And he might not be on yet. I don't see him scrolling. So if not, I'll go. Sheldon, let's go to you, and just you can give a hotspot update and what you're seeing, the trends.
Good morning, everyone. For you that have not been part of the hotspots, 6 days
Sheldon,
a week.
I don't know if you can others hear him? Is the volume okay? Okay.
Okay. So every 6 days a week, we drive the entrances to Spokane, and we have identified 11 hotspots. And as we've seen over this for the last 3 months of driving this, that there has been a dramatic change in quite a few of the hotspot areas. But we still have some very, very tough places that are hard to make a difference with the actions that we are allowed to do. And those places are right there at the Brown Viaduct. And near that is Pacific and Second. And we have also City Gate. And those three areas are tough, and they probably will not change until we are allowed to do our sit and lie enforcement, which we were trying to get to that point, and hopefully maybe later today we can, or in this meeting, we'll hear where that we are with sit and lie. So that's my report. And if you would like to be added to the morning report, send me an email and I will copy you every morning.
All right, Sheldon, thank you. And if I'm on that list every day, and I do appreciate it. It's obviously monotonous work, but appreciate it because we see the ebbs and flows. But thanks, Sheldon, for the work you're doing. Now let's go over. So on today's call, we have Adam Valdez. Adam is leads the gang unit for Spokane Police Department, and he will share, some of what's going on in regards to gangs and any type of activity around that. So Adam, all yours.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Wendell, for the opportunity. Can everybody hear me okay? We good? All right, awesome. So while I'm doing the share screen here. Oh, I had a PowerPoint presentation. Is there any way, do you guys want to see that, or do you just want to discuss things? Because I can't share for some reason.
Okay, hey Jesse, do you mind granting him sharing?
Whoa. All right, here we go. So I apologize. I do not have a camera on my computer, but I'm nothing special to look at. So this is not working right, of course. Why would it? So hi, everybody. Thank you for having me here. I appreciate you guys, and I want to understand this is Spokane citizens, which luckily it's been my honor to serve here for the last 15 years. So I'm currently assigned to our Safe Streets Task Force, which is, I'll explain here in a minute, but I've been asked to put this in my thing just because gangs are right now a hot topic across the nation, not just in our area, but points, reviews, or opinions in this presentation represent the official position of policy of the Spokane Police Department, Spokane County Sheriff's Department, or the United States Department of Justice. So that being said, the unit I work for is a FBI Safe Streets Task Force. It's a hodgepodge of all kinds of different agencies. We have Washington DOC, the Spokane County Sheriff's Department, the Border Patrol, the Spokane Police Department, which I've been in for 15 years, and we work directly with the FBI out of the FBI office. So I have, it's called a TFO. So I have federal arrest powers and local state powers. A little bit about me, not that anybody cares, but I moved here 22 years ago. I fell in love with Spokane. My family my kids were born here. I've been a beat cop in Spokane. I worked Hilliard section, East Central, West Central neighborhood, downtown, all over before I got to this unit. I'm also on our crisis hostage negotiation team. So when we have those incidents where people are barricaded or on a bridge, we're one of the people that actually gets called if it gets elongated, because a lot of our officers surprisingly are great communicators, which people don't understand is they do a lot of good work out there. So since there's no photo of me, the tall, handsome gentleman with the giant beard on your right, that's me. So a little bit about us. So things we do, we track gang activity and trends. And for those of you who are in the military or even in business, you obviously see what trends and what's going on, and you try to front load it. And I'll explain some of the things that we front load as far as intervention, prevention techniques we use, not just enforcement, but we also look to get parents involved, because doing this job, I found that these kids, and that's what we're dealing with, only 13, 12-year-old kids up to 18 now, who are killing each other over a slight, somebody was disrespected, and we'll talk a little bit about that. We investigate gang crimes. Anytime, last summer, it started about in August. We had all the way through this beginning of this year, we had a lot of shootings. We had about 6 young men shot and killed, and they were all gang-related violence. And so what we try to do is we try to share our intelligence with our law enforcement partners to keep them safe. We work with community organizations. We'll talk about that. About 8 years ago, when I first got in the unit, there was a trend of, hey, you know what? You can arrest somebody, but what do we do when they want to change? And we talked about that, and we've actually come up with a really good plan through the Office of Juvenile Justice, OJJDP, that we have a grant through. And we provide gang training. Unfortunately, people always ask me, like, what would you do if you weren't a police officer? I'd probably be a librarian, because I love to read. But, the more educated you are in understanding of what it is the better you're informed and ready to see what's going on. And I've always been a big believer of educating myself. So what we go by, this is the Washington State Code. I'm not a big fan of lawyer talk, but basically what this is saying is you have to have 3 or more people. They have to have a common name or identifying sign or symbol. The key part in this, it's not illegal to be a gang. And I've had people ask me, like, why don't you just arrest them for being in a gang? You know, we have a thing called the Constitution. You're allowed to get out of there peaceably. It's when they engage in criminal acts in a pattern of street gang activity. So that can be anywhere from a group that likes to steal cars to a group that's involved in murders, drug dealing, and human trafficking, you know, pimping young women. And that's actively going on in our city at this time. And I always ask, like, you know, is this a gang? And you look at it, and I always joke, you know, I think the Girl Scouts are more of a gang because when they sell their cookies out in front of the store, they always like, you know what I'm talking about? They always get you. They're like, please, mister. So, you know, you could say, yeah, they have that common identifying sign or symbol. They all wear the same things. They get badges and things for doing, but they're not engaged in criminal activity. Now, is this a gang? And I could say, yes, they are, because this is a documented gang. They were the Nortania Red Boys. A group of them were involved in multiple shootings, beatings up in the Hilliard area for a couple years. And the most recent case that we did against them was they were involved in was it 2007, 8, in a shooting of a young man who was just happened to wear blue. And we did him for gang enhancement crimes because they thought he was a rival gang member. And they did 2 of the group in this group did 47 years and 37 years. And it kind of goes to show that when you involve in criminal gang behavior, we have those kind of tools, especially those that are just randomly shooting in the street, which we've seen over and over doing that. People always ask me, like, what a gang member is, and obviously this is any person who actually participates in a criminal street gang, promotes, furthers, or assists. Now, does that actually have to be the guy that pulls the trigger? No. It could be the guy that sells the drugs. It could be the guy that is pimping girls out. It could be the female that has a house where they crash and hang out at, and they got a safe place to go after they do their drive-bys. You know, those kind of things, those people are involved in that. And we try to focus on those individuals because you don't want gang members to feel comfortable in your community, because if they do, they're going to do whatever they want. I just read a report. I don't know if you saw that. It was in Chicago. There's a rapper gang member that walked out of the police station and was shot 64 times by another rival, just right across from the police station. You know, that's kind of things we don't want here in our community, and it's very dangerous. An affiliate, and this is actually from a gang member who's actually doing really well now. We got him a job. He's a long haul truck driver. He's a good dude. He's always asked, he said, that's who you favorite, even if you're not in a gang. So to him, it's you know, people that cheer for the team, like a baseball team or a football team. That's kind of what an affiliate can be, and that could be just about anybody. So the gangster mindset, it's a different kind of culture than what we're having here. You know, you give me the honor to speak to you. You giving me the respect to listen to what my opinion and what my observations have been as a gang expert. The main thing is respect, and it's not the come in as you're doing a business deal or you're doing a job interview and you shake the person's hand, you look them direct in their eye. Their respect is who does the most shootings, who does the most violence, who sells the most drugs, who's flashing money. I always teach our kids in the academy that if you see somebody flashing hundreds of dollar bills on Facebook, they're probably a gang member, because that's not normally what I do. I don't know about you guys. I just don't have hundreds of dollars just flashing around. But in their world, that's where respect comes from. Reputation is huge. The more violent you are, the more extreme you are, the more people will fear you, and your reputation is huge. I've talked to several young men and women who say when certain people show up at a party, they leave, or they know who they are and they know they carry guns and they openly flash it. And it's frightening to them because they're just having their good time, and then they get into it. Retaliation, we've seen that happen here. We had a homicide here of Norvell Amos, and those two groups have been shooting at each other for the last 5 years, and it all kind of came together right when that happened. There was the homicide happened off of 5th and, oh my God, I can't think of the cross streets. It's off 5th, right across from Michael Brown's delicious soul food place. And this has been going on 3 years before. And it set an offset where as you guys saw, there was like 47 drive-by shootings we had. And most of those are reported, not the ones unreported. Rivalries, it's just like anything. Crips versus Bloods, Crips versus Crips. Norteños versus Sureños. Those rivalries do exist, and when these groups see each other, it's pretty much expected that violence will occur. If you do not, you're not only look weak inside your gang, but other gangs will see you as weak and target you. Racial factors. It used to be if you were a Hispanic male, like I grew up in Southern California, you were going to be in a Hispanic street gang. That kind of stuff is gone by the wayside. It doesn't matter to these kids. They don't really care who you really look like or what you look like, as long as you're part of their group and their friends. They have this almost, I would say they have a quality that I wish most people had, in the fact that they don't care what you look like. They just like you because of you joined their gang. It's interesting, and it's something us professionals are trying to figure out what happened there. But in prison, it's completely different, and that's a whole different kind of thing. And family. A lot of people don't understand that these young men and women don't come from the best households. They come from places where they're broken, abuse, and other things that have been happening to them. They go to a group where they feel it's protected, and they feel like they're a part of something. But inevitably, talking to a lot of these, I've talked to over thousands of gang members, and have told me, said, every time I go to jail, nobody puts money on my books. Somebody's always taking my stuff. Nobody's taking my mom's. And, they've actually said to us, like, the gang in it, you guys go check on my mom, make sure she's okay before they do. Like, what, and that's kind of the things that we do, just to kind of change the way people have perceptions about us, but also change family behavior, multi-generational change, as they like to say. And money. Money's huge in their world. They're selling, they call them Mexies. They're actually pills that are pressed to look like Xanny bars or Oxycontin. They're just fentanyl, and those are coming straight from Mexico. And they're selling those all over the place. These kids are selling it everywhere. Not a lot of, some cocaine, a little bit of meth and heroin, but a lot of pills and vapes and what do they call it, the honey oil and all that kind of stuff. They sell that online. They sell it on social media. And law enforcement, it's hard to get around that, because there's, and usually right now I go, how many of you have Snapchat? And everybody raises their hand who has it. And then I kind of make a joke, but it's not going to work because nobody can see me. So, and girls, we've seen a big uptick in human trafficking. And for those of you not familiar with that, it's basically when a young lady is forced, coerced, or brought into sexual slavery, pretty much. And they can make, I think, they can make on average over $100,000 a year on a single girl, cash money. And luckily we have a county and a city guy that works with us, and they're really good at the job. And we've actually have multiple operations where we save people. And it's actually one of the few times where we had one young lady who was beaten. They shot her with heroin, broke her arm, and she calls us her angels, because she said we saved her life, which is kind of cool. It makes you feel good. Like, a lot of time in this job, you don't get that satisfaction. A lot of places they're getting recruitments, middle schools. I'm hearing every day about these kids. They're kind of getting recruited younger. They're like, hey, join this team, join that team. Parties, high schools. They're in our schools. I know it's not a popular opinion, and a lot of people don't want to say it, but that's kind of where the kids are. But a lot of our school administrators recognize this and are working to help prevent that. So a lot of people ask me how gangs get here. It's migration. Like myself, I got to move here 22 years ago, and emulation. That's kind of where they're getting. You can type on your phone Spokane gangs, and there's a whole list of YouTube videos and craziness they have on there. And you can look up all stuff in movies and TV. And emulation's a huge factor. Some of the influences that we're seeing from our area, and I use this map. I've contacted gang members from as far as Florida, Louisiana, Arkansas, Illinois, Texas, California, the West Side. They come from all over. And I usually joke with a lot of people. I'm like, yeah, come to Spokane. You'll never meet anybody that was actually born here, typically, because we're all kind of refugees that come here because it's a great place to live. So let's talk a little bit about some of the groups we have in Spokane. Here we go. So we have our Crips, we have our Bloods, our Folk Nation, also known as Gangster Disciples, and they recently changed their name to Growth and Development, which is just another way of rebranding. They're really good about that. Serenos and Norteños, and outlaw motorcycle gangs. So Crips is one of the groups we have. There's some of the graffiti back in the day. I can go further explanation if you want, but you can kind of get that they don't like a certain group. They'll cross each other's names out. They use numbers are huge in gang world. 24, 18, 13, 14, whatever it is. Numbers always have a significance in what it is. They're saying this group is basically saying like we're Native Pride Gangster Crips. We're from the 2-4 set. What's above that? And they're Norteño killers, Sereno killers, and that's not a very nice word that they use there. But they don't use the CK because it means Crip killer. So they'll use the C or a CC at the end of a word to do that. And I know it's kind of childish and juvenile, but to them it's very important that they have that understanding. And then they cross out their enemy. Bloods we have here, why is my thing not working? Sorry, my computer froze. They were kind of set up as the rivals. There's a long history of them. Usually if I'm in a teaching class and I always ask like people what neighborhood this is going to be, most people say Upper South Hill, 5 Mile, 9 Mile, and it's actually Liberty Lake. And it's one of those things where I think Liberty Lake has the highest medium income. I could be wrong in Spokane County. It doesn't matter. You can live there and you can see that the gang B's up, C's down. Obviously this kid is a little more, how do I say this, not totally ingrained, because I've never seen a gangster use an apostrophe S like a possessive, which is kind of interesting to me, and that's why I put it on here. But it shows you that it doesn't matter where you live. It's kind of all over. Folk Nation, Gangster Disciples, we have here. That's the Star of David. They use that as their symbol. There's a long history of it. They have a thing called a Book of Knowledge. You can Google it. It's about 74 pages, and there's all kinds of meanings. And yeah, it's ridiculous. This is some graffiti that was brought to us by one of our schools. Their rivals are going to be the Latin Kings. So on the top right, you'll see they have an LK backwards, using the F word again to disrespect the gang. And like I said, they'll use a lot of that. I always joke that I never heard of a black gangster disciples or decibels. I always thought that was interesting instead of just on the bottom left there. So they're actually supposed to be disciples. So Serenos, this is an interesting group. We're seeing a lot more of these, this come up in this area. The Valley, my counterpart, and Deputy Booth has been actively engaging with some of these guys, and they're involved in some of the things out there that we've been trying to stop. But here's some graffiti again. You can see this is Red Boys, but they're crossing out the Serenos 13. And like I said, there's a long history behind it. Norteños, which is the rivals of the Serenos, we have those here. They're not as active. After that big case we did against them where we put 2 of their guys away, we actually contacted a couple of those guys and they said, yeah, we're not messing with you guys. We don't want to go to prison for 47 years. We're still gang members, but we're not doing that. And it kind of brought the violence down and made it better. This is some graffiti you can see. As you can tell, I put this up here because it's gang graffiti, because there's, the Sereno killer, North Side, XIV, which is 14, the 14th letter alphabet is N. It's a 509 area code, shooter, and there's just a whole bunch to it. This is one of the prettier examples of it. This is their symbol. A lot of people get this confused with a Nazi warbird. It's actually a legitimate symbol. It's called a Wego bird. It's for the United Farm Workers, and they took a legitimate symbol, just like the Gangster Disciples did, the Star of David, which is a Jewish religious symbol, and stole it, and they use it at that. So the kind of issue that's kind of encompasses what we are, but what we've been mainly dealing with is this youth gangs. These kids, that's kind of the best quote I ever heard, is they don't care about killing people. And it's true. I've talked to these kids since they were, these are multi-generational kids. So I've talked to them when they were little kids, 5-year-olds running around. And then now that they're 15, 16 years old, I've talked to them and they don't really care. I've offered them, hey, I got guys that are mentors that will help you. I have job opportunities. And they said, nope, I'm going to be a gangster. I'm going to prison or I'm dead. our juvenile violence is, I mean, it's just across the nation. It's happening. Like I said, we've had 6 juveniles murdered in our community, and one murder is sad enough, but when our kids are being slaughtered out in the streets, it's very frustrating, especially when myself and a couple other my counterparts in the city and county went to some of our leaders and asked for help. And we pretty much were told, yeah, we'll help you. And then nothing happened. And the killings kept continued until some of the best investigators I've worked with the county and the city and the FBI put some of the individuals that were involved in these shootings and involved in some of this violence. And then, as you can see, our drive-bys have dropped dramatically, and our killings have with these young men and women. So the OROPU, which was a kid that was killed in the valley, it's still unsolved. We're still working on that, and we're still trying to help our county counterparts figure that out, because it's talking to or seeing his parents and hearing about how devastated they are, it just kind of wears on you. Here's some of the things you'll see on social media. So like I said, this is Snapchat. I mean, they're basically it's an open air market. You can buy drugs, guns, girls, anything you want on there. And that's kind of the issue we're dealing with, right? Because I don't know if you're familiar with Snapchat. You take a photo of it, it's up for 24 hours, and then it's gone. This is the new way of doing things. Social media, I think, is good and bad. Social media is great because businesses are able to reach out and communicate with a lot more people. But this is the bad part, right? This is where our kids are getting pills, or like they figure out where to get pills from, or they show videos of violence. This is how they communicate with each other too. So when you talk to these kids, they don't really speak well in person, but I've seen on Snapchat or text messages, they can fly. And they don't even really use text messages. They use Snapchat or Facebook Messenger to communicate with each other. This video here, let's see if I can get it to play, is this kind of encapsulates what we're dealing with right now. So if you couldn't see, it says another F word, the feds, that is a handgun that is in the vehicle. And this was posted on Snapchat. And I was able to grab this. A friend of mine got it for me and wanted to show. Oops, sorry. Come on. Let's see here. And it's on a traffic stop. And that's actually, I believe it's a trooper that was behind him. I haven't been able to ID it, but you can see in the rear view mirror, there's traffic stop, and he's right behind him and he's flashing a gun. That's pretty frightening for myself, or anybody else that's involved in law enforcement, that the guy's just blatantly showing like, yep, I'll do what I need to do. So as far as gang violence, and this is there's always small issues leading up to the main event. It's never a big premeditated thing. Extreme violence are rarely not premeditated. If somebody gets shot or there's a stabbing or whatever, usually it's somebody came up with a plan. And social media plays a big role. Right now we have several active investigations, and I can tell you, like, everything started on social media. That's where it started from. So I talked about what we've been doing. Spokane Police Department and Youth Build started this, and DOC and County Sheriff's Department and Juvenile Detention. We started this Safe Communities Partnership. I'm pretty impressed with myself. I was able to do this QR code. It goes to their Facebook page. So if you want, you can scan that, and it kind of explains what they do. So basically what it is it's Youth Build, where they get kids education, they get kids jobs, they get them job training, and prevent them from being involved in gang activity. I've always said you can fix 2-3 generations down the line if you can get the generation today to do something different than the gangster lifestyle. I put this out there because they're always looking for partners to give kids a chance to work. Just the other day, I had one young man who's been involved in gang activity call me and said, "I'm done, Adam." He's like, "I'm done. Can you help me?" So, absolutely. So I hooked him up with Safe Communities Partnership, Kaylin and Brandy over there in Charles, and now he's getting an education and going to school. And that's good. That's a good thing. It's better than putting him away for the rest of his life. He's made that decision. Questions, comments, concerns, rumors, anything I can help with. And then also, here's my contact info. If you have any other further questions, anything I can help with, that's what I'm here for. I've had the honor of been here for 15 years, and I just appreciate what you guys are doing here, and the fact that you want to make Spokane great is I think is awesome.
Hey, Adam, this is Chud. Thank you for the presentation, and more importantly, thank you for keeping us safe, and appreciate it. It's eye-opening and it's a little sobering, but I would encourage anybody on this call to reach out. I found Adam to be very responsive. I would love to hear more about, the influence, if there is cartels in town and what's happening there, but I want to respect the time. And so maybe we can follow up with you, Adam, on some other questions and then get back to the group with those. So thank you for joining us this morning, and thank you for presenting, and thank you for what you do. So with that, I know Tim Schwerin, he did jump on for a little bit. Thank you, Adam. Have a good day. You can stay on too. You're more than welcome. We had Tim he has to testify right now, so he is out testifying. The only thing he was going to share was that with some of the law enforcement reform legislation that went through this last legislative session, one of the big things that he wanted to make clear to the group is that trespassing is changing, and what Spokane Police Department can or can't do is really changing. But it is more important than ever to post no trespassing signs up. I've been working with Captain Mark Griffith from the Spokane Police Department out north, and he's been helping. But I've had to put up no trespassing signs. So he wanted to make sure that if with you property owners that you have the correct signage out there. He's got some other items I'll probably update you with in the newsletter, the update that we send out on a weekly basis. So with that, I want to thank both Council Member Karen Stratton and Council Member Lori Kinnear for being here. They've had a busy couple of weeks with the couple of ordinances, but I would love to hear, Lori, just an update on the council's perspective, what's going on, what you're seeing. I know it's been busy for you, and I also want to thank you for being part of the tour. You and Betsy were part of the tour when we went downtown, and we got to go to GSI and discuss it. So I do also want to tell the group that Lori has been probably the most empathetic towards listening and communicating. Sometimes it's not what we want to hear, but I do want to share my appreciation because she does listen and does respond. So Lori, if you don't mind just sharing a little bit from the council's perspective.
Sure, thanks. And I want to thank my counterpart, Karen Stratton, for joining me today, because we work together on so many things, and we're a team, and Karen is doing some great work in the northwest part of town. I represent District 2, which is everything south of the river, downtown, West Plains, and all the way out to Eagle Ridge. So it's a huge area. Just a little bit about myself. I moved here in 2000, so I've been here for 21 years. My husband's family has been here since the late 1800s. So there's quite a legacy of either Ken or me in the state of Washington, and specifically Spokane. And I think what we should do is provide a couple of examples of where we've been so that we can understand where we are today. Historical context helps us understand how we refine, change, or completely modify our strategy going forward. So 3 years ago, Council passed a resolution recognizing homelessness as a regional issue and requesting that regional cities and the county take a responsibility for providing services to their own residents facing homelessness. Now, this was intended to make sure that services and shelter exist outside of the city, specifically outside the downtown core. And I believe this remains the guiding vision for both council and the administration. Yet to date, we've really seen no progress on getting our neighbors to invest in being part of this solution. And I know you're all familiar with Martin versus the city of Boise, and that's the Ninth Circuit ruling that prohibits the city from enforcing sit and lie unless we can prove that we have shelter space available. So laws such as sit and lie can be implemented when we have sufficient data to show that there's shelter space available. There are city staff working on creating a real-time or a semi-real-time dashboard to present this information. And in the meantime, council has funded additional shelter space at the request of the administration Most recently, it was the Cannon Street shelter that's in Brown's Addition. And as you know, we need a broader solution than the one-off shelters. For the past few months, I worked with administration and council staff on a resolution that establishes a strategy to address housing and homelessness going forward. The resolution passed council unanimously at the end of last month, and it's not meant to micromanage the administration in executing their vision. I'm hoping it provides the mayor and her team with a clear list of priorities that she is assured she has council support on. Now, these include, and Councilmember Stratton's going to go over some of these as well. These include data. So we need information about the facts on the ground so that we can make sound decisions. Planning. We need to see the mayor's plan. How much additional shelter space is needed? Where is it going to be? What's it going to look like? When will we have real-time or close to real-time data to help us enforce sit and lie? And how exactly are we going to get our regional partners to do their part? I think that's really important. We also need consistent reporting. We need the administration to tell everyone, council and the public, what the plan is and how it will be implemented. And then finally, accountability. We need to track data, compare the data to the plan, and communicate the truth about the things so that we know whether our efforts are working. Since council unanimously passed this resolution, I'm hoping the administration returns to us for their budgeting, funding, or other implementation needs. Because council is the legislative body, there are some things we can do right now by ordinance to improve our existing homeless system. And this is why we're considering an ordinance amending the policy framework for the city's homeless response system based on what we've seen the last few years. The current version of the ordinance clarifies that the city of Spokane needs to continue to provide low barrier beds unless there is no demonstrated further demand, and that there needs to be a plan in place to replace shelter capacity in the event that night-by-night shelter beds or inclement weather center capacity contracts expire. Now, this is foundational to our homeless response. We can't continue the cycle of having gaps in capacity, and this is something the city hasn't yet figured out. It goes years back, this is not recent. So to help them get there, the council can require them to have a plan in place. And the ordinance also says that all new shelter contracts or contract renewals require that the provider fully participate in and provide real-time data into the city's HMIS, including homeless shelter utilization and available capacity. Again, this goes back to being able to enforce sit and lie. So we're requiring in the proposed ordinance that the city present to the city council and publish on the city website this HMIS data so that we know who and where the homeless individuals are in the city and the county. And I think this informs us going forward. And I want to just acknowledge too that this is frustrating for all of you who have experienced the ramifications of years of poor planning and execution when it comes to housing and the homeless issue. I understand that. I'm downtown, or was before COVID, almost every day, so I saw it firsthand. I've been on the council for almost 6 years now. I've been in the council office since 2008. As a council member, I've continually supported and spearheaded funding efforts, as Chud knows, related to public safety, especially downtown. Long-term solutions require a foundation of data and interest in implementing strategies informed by that data, and we're not quite there yet. So I understand that Johnny Perkins is on, I'm hoping he's on this call, and he can kind of fill in what I've said here. And I'd like to turn it over to Councilmember Stratton, because she has some things that I am really excited to participate in. And I think she can fill in some of the gaps for all of us and how we could move forward. So Karen, could you go ahead and talk?
I can do that. Welcome, everybody. It's good to see so many familiar faces. Just to kind of follow up with Lori's comments, I'll start by saying about 4 years ago, I had to do some late night grocery shopping at our Safeway. And as I was leaving the store, it was winter, it was cold. there was a young woman in a car parked in the Safeway parking lot with 3 children in the back seat. And I knew when I got out that it didn't look right to me. And I thought, if she's still there when I get back, I'm going to check on her. So when I came back, she was still in the parking lot. And I asked her if she needed any help. And what she said to me is they were sleeping in their car that night. I asked her about housing, and she said, well, I have a voucher for housing, but I'm not able to use it. I'm being turned away by landlords. And so that kind of started some work that was completed a couple years back, that we worked on housing discrimination issues relating to those vouchers, because it hit me that people have vouchers, they go through a process, they can get housing if we have landlords that understand the rules and what they need to do. And it also keeps people from being on the streets. And that's the hardest thing in the world, is to see, especially families, homeless. So I was proud of our council that we were able to pass that and get some of those discrimination pieces in place. So we are able to help some folks. Currently, I'm working on an ordinance that would limit and monitor pop-up shelters. I don't know how many of you heard about what happened in the Garland district last winter. We had a organization that decided they were going to put up a shelter in a church, and it didn't go well. And so I worked with the Garland business district and the neighborhood to kind of help put together some thoughts on how we can control that next time, because it really is, it wasn't good for anybody in that area. I do believe that there are some immediate actions that we could do. The first would be sit and lie. I agree, we need a sit and lie needs to be citywide. We also need citywide panhandling. As Chud can testify, it was a pretty frustrating situation when we were working with him when he was dealing with issues on his property in Northtown Square. So that's up there. Lori has explained kind of the barriers to that right now, but we continue to look at that and continue to see what we can do in that area. I think we could be successful in the panhandling and sit and lie if we can get that ordinance to work. I do want to say that I support a regional approach to homelessness. I spoke to David Condon, and I've spoken to Mayor Woodward about this 2 or 3 times, and I've also shared this with Mary Cuney. I'm really encouraging an idea to reach out to our healthcare community and our higher education institutions as potential partners and investors in a regional shelter system that could be a one-stop for homeless programs and resources. What I mean by that is we could utilize students from the colleges and the universities, could provide services in several areas. We have medical students, we have dental students, social workers, we have job training, we have vet med. That's just a few. And these could be opportunities for students to earn credits, complete service projects, practicums, on-the-job training requirements. And in this model, both the providers and the homeless would benefit from that. In addition to that, I have a background in higher ed, and we could connect with quality research and grant writing via faculty and staff. And if we had a large enough space, we could house the nonprofit organizations on site for job training, apprenticeship training, housing assistance. The other big service that is so badly needed for trying to get people back on their feet is driver's license relicensing. We could have low-cost legal services and more. Technology is such right now that every user of the shelter would be required to wear a name tag, and these badges could be used to track data, track services, progression, other valuable information. We could even get information on where people are coming from. So we could, I don't know, one of my thoughts was we could send bills to the other communities whose homeless we're serving and get some reimbursement for those services. So that's something that I've been talking about in the community for the last several months, and I'll continue to do that because I think if we could get, my first thought was the Jensen Bird building and put some heavy money and work into that. And I'm not sure that will ever happen, but that's my dream for that because it's so close to the university district. But Lori's right. We need data, we need facts, we need planning, we need cooperation, and we need all hands on deck. And so I guess what I'm here to say is I want to participate. I want to be helpful. I want to support our businesses. I want to support our police officers. Frankly, I think we need more police on the street. We need the downtown police precinct to be full. We need police officers in that precinct and creating relationships with our business owners. So I'm available. And, we've just gone through another really unfortunate incident in the Emerson Garfield neighborhood with a huge lack of communication to the neighborhood when the Way Out shelter was opened, and little to no information to the neighbors or the businesses there. And we're still, finding our way around that issue, but it really is unfortunate that we're all kind of thrown in this together. We all want to do the right thing, but there's a lot of barriers that I think we have to get together and talk about. And finally, I think, Chud, you said it, this is not a political issue. This is a real human issue. I used to say that you never know what it's like until, that could be you or a family member out there on the streets. And for me, about 10 years ago, it was a family member. So I have a whole different view of what the system is and what the system isn't and what we can do to help people. So I'm here. I want to be a resource, and I'm happy to participate in these meetings. Anytime you want me here, I will be here. So thanks so much for your time.
Thank you both, Lori and Karen, for sharing. One of our members of the group, I don't know if he's still on or not. I know he was in his car. Is Len? I think you say Yurgalet. He owns the building at the just as you come out of the Brown Street Viaduct on that south. I guess it would be the south or it would be the north west corner there. And he's just been struggling, but he's been in communication because he lost a tenant with Council President Beggs. And Council President Beggs stated that there was a need for 500 more low barrier shelter beds before we can get to sit and lie enforcement. Does that sound right?
We don't know because we don't have the data.
Yeah.
So it might be 500, it might be 200, it might be we're sufficient, but without the data, there's no way to know. That's why both Karen and I have said we need that data so that we can assess how we go forward and whether we do need more shelter space, because right now we don't know. And I saw some things on chat that talk about UGM. And if you look back at Martin versus the city of Boise, it's very clear that that ruling is about low barrier shelter. UGM is not low barrier. So it's not that we're saying UGM is not doing good work. That's not it at all. We're handcuffed by a ruling that says we have to provide low barrier shelter. So that's not an option for us to debate. That is what the Ninth Circuit, that's hard to say, Ninth Circuit Court has said.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it. And I agree. I think we all agree that if we can't measure it, we can't manage it. And right now we're being managed by it, unfortunately, because we're not tracking it. So we're 100% behind. Please reach out to this group or because we don't know where we stand, red, blue, right, left. We all know we want to be the safest and cleanest city. That's what we want. So thank you both.
Could I add one more thing?
Yeah.
I want to talk about Chris Batten for a minute because I think he's on this call. And he had a really good idea, and that is his good neighbor agreement. And I would like to see this group revitalize that again and ask Citygate, ask House of Charity to sign a good neighbor agreement and make that look like other good neighbor agreements where you have a responsibility to the people that have the buildings around you to keep up your space, to make sure you're not impacting their business, and all the things that Chris talked about with what he did. And I think we need to take his original draft, dust it off, update it, and put it in place. And I think that would help. It would give those folks who are impacting the surrounding businesses an idea of what you all are going through. And I think that it might help. I don't know if Chris is still on, but
Chris is on. And so, Chris, you have homework now. You good for that? Dust off that good neighbor agreement and let's get that rolling. I appreciate that, Laurie, because I do think that's going to have some positive impact. All right. Without, I want to not cut Chris Patterson short, but Chris Patterson's on the Zoom as well. Chris, as you probably know, I think he's been 3 weeks on the job as the advisor to the mayor for homeless and housing. But Chris has got, well, he comes with, I won't even go there because I don't want to pump his ego up any further. But sorry, Chris, all yours.
Thanks, Chad. The first thing I want to say is thanks to thank Councilwoman Lori Kinnear and Karen Stratton and those guys for joining the conferences. I agree, and one of the things that I will say and emphasize even more is that homelessness, mental health, opioid crisis, everything that we all know that are true systemic issues of why are some of the issues that we face with people on the streets. And then there is true homelessness as well, which we're trying to address all those with compassion and structure and empathy and regulations and everything else that gets in the way of certain things that we know we want to do the right thing, because this is not how we as individuals raise our families nor our kids on how to be responsible, productive adults when they get to that age. But this is not a political issue. I do agree with that 100%. I know that the mayor, since my short time here, I'm seeing a lot of different things that I think we have to address the issue. I appreciate very much where the business owners have stepped up in a major way to help push the issues, to help all individuals become more aware of the challenges they're facing. Because when it's your pocketbook that's writing the check, as an employer, you sign the front of the check and the back of the check. So I understand that, and we all do understand that. But the biggest thing is how do we separate the politics out of this, because it really is a non-political issue. I mean, this is a part of the social ill society that we have to address, and we can't ignore this. But the challenges that we also face is, the decisions of the state courts, legislation for drug charges, legislation for holding people accountable. How do we do these things in a balanced way to really address the issues of what we're trying to do? And that can be very challenging. It can be very cumbersome, can be very frustrating. For me as well as everybody else on this meeting. So it's going to take more of the all hands on deck. I do like the fact of accountability for keeping your neighbors, especially with what they're doing with the Good Neighbor program. I think that's something that should be done immediately. I think that's something that is kind of a common sense approach, especially when it's in an area that's keeping people from coming down to separate the business issues versus the social ills of society. I mean, we all know that we need to address this issue. We all know that we want to get this done in the right way. And I'm hoping that can be done in a pretty transparent and open way. And I think what we just need to keep doing is these meetings. And my intention is to make sure to get to everybody as fast as possible. There's a lot of people to actually get to, but I think we're going to have to try to keep our heads cool. And really, really work with each other so that we can actually focus on the task at hand. And that is, how do we solve this issue? How do we improve the issue to make, Spokane a safe game place, which it always has been, as far as I'm concerned. For me growing up as a kid, this is something very different. This is not something I've ever seen the city of Spokane to be in a position like this. So I know we can all do better, and I know we can all improve what we have to do. But it's going to take some pretty hard meetings. It's going to take some pretty tough discussions. And I will say myself, blasting people in articles and going back and forth politically is not going to be the end result. It is not going to help the situation. And it doesn't do anything except for the individual's ego. So I think we have to address the issue of how we will work together to improve the systems in the state of Washington. Having worked in the field of health and human services my whole life, mental health is a true issue. Drug addiction is a true issue. And we can't ignore that. And there's nothing wrong with giving people a chance to improve that. But there is the level of accountability that we need to make sure that people do follow as well. And I think we can do that with everybody on this platform. So thank you.
Hey, Chris, I know that Johnny Perkins shared with the group last month that Catholic Charities, this goes back sort of the Good Neighbor agreement, was going to launch a pilot program on cleaning up the Brown Street Viaduct. Do you know the status and how that's coming together?
Not offhand, no.
Okay.
No, I think we've been, to be fair, I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces right now, and I think we're with people coming out of COVID and coming back to the office is a different thing that's also affecting things. But I know we're trying to push things along. I know Johnny's been working his tail off on getting things structured and set up.
All right. In my understand, I guess they were trying to launch July 1st, but I don't think they were able to hire employees to get it going. And now they're going to try, I believe August 1st is what I understand, that they'll activate the team to clean up the Brown Street Viaduct.
That's what I understand, but I'll have to ask Johnny again.
Okay. Anything that we can help out with from this group?
I think doing what you guys are doing. I mean, you know Chad as well as I do. I mean, I can tell you that having traveled the country to see what other cities and municipalities, whether you're Democrat or Republican or independent, the one common theme that I did see is that the individuals actually came together in the cities that are thriving or improving their policies to make sure that it's there to benefit all citizens as much as possible. There's never a perfect fit, but we do have to look at the reality of what we're dealing with in society. People are not computers. You can't hit Control Alt Delete and reset their brain. We have to really do something that's much different. And I plan on being as blunt as possible and making sure people understand both sides of how to address the issues and what the challenges are, and whether it's staffing, whether it's politics, whether it's different things. So I think as long as we can all work with each other, that's going to be the biggest focus. And I think growing this group you have here is phenomenal. And I think the more people that get involved, the better chances we have of getting things done.
Hey, Chris, Charlotte Nemec brought up a good question, and I think it ties into what we saw in San Diego, and that is the private sector stepping up to the table with some funding, and then really moving that accountability piece to another level. And I think they partnered with the city of Spokane, a private group partnered with the city of San Diego on counting on a regular basis, not the point in time count, but like on a 12-month basis. Do you know much about that? And is that something we as a private sector can help the public sector with on counting?
No, and I don't have enough of the information from that to really remember it. I know that, I will be speaking with those folks down in San Diego. There's some people that I have a high amount of respect for in the housing authorities down there that know what they've done and that they have used their plans. There's different plans across the country that everybody has tried to do to solve the homeless issues. But to be fair, everything turns political. And once it turns political, it's really hard to bring it back. And that's what we're trying to avoid. My focus is to try to make sure that it doesn't turn political and that we can continue pushing it. But right now, politics are in the middle of every decision we make, and it shouldn't be. And it should be very clear that we're here to take and have the compassion for the people of the city of Spokane, and people have to remember that we're going to grow. City of Spokane is going to grow. We get to be that 600,000+ population in combined areas. We need to make sure that we're ready for what's coming. And I think that what we're doing now, what you guys have done thus far to bring this group together is key. And you know some of those folks in San Diego as well as I do, that these individuals who are, whether it's a Lucky Duck Foundation or other places, they expect performance and they have a very high titration. They know exactly what they're doing and they make sure that things run fundamentally smooth as much as possible. So I know that there's always people that are willing to help. So I think that's the biggest thing, is just getting information. I'm asking for different cities across the country that I know what's their successful models, what they've done, what they failed at, what we shouldn't do. And the number one statement I've talked to so far is they said, if it makes political, you're dead in the water. If it gets political, it gets nowhere. And so I'm just going to say that over and over and over again. Politics have to stay out of this in order to get performance done. Any business owner who knows what they've got to do, you don't make a decision based on politics. You make a decision based on performance.
Thank you. And I think this group couldn't agree more. And so Lori and Karen, thank you for taking this hour with us. I really appreciate it. Please challenge us, reach out to us. You know, if you need an advisory group on brainstorming ideas on counting and or, you know, the HMIS system. We have one of our providers that presented last month is Family Promise. His name's Joe Ader, and he's brilliant. I mean, the guy knows his numbers, and I think we can incorporate some of that. But anyways, it is going to take the community to work on it. It's not an elected official's responsibility. It's the community's responsibility, but it takes us working together. It's 10 o'clock straight up. Yep.
Really quick before we get out of here, thank you. And if anybody needs any sample Good Neighbor agreements, I do have some. And if anybody has pull that can get me the building the big building, I always forget the name that I talked about for my big homeless center, let me know. It's going to take a lot of money, but it would be a great building that we could really, really invest in to make that a total resource center that we could work with universities and hospitals. Jensen Bird, that's it.
Thank you. Well, and anybody that's not on the email list, if you don't get an email from me, send me a chat with your email address and I'll make sure you're added. Share the message because I think it's not political. We're not endorsing candidates. This group has been asked to endorse candidates. I know there's one on here right now. He's been on every meeting, Christopher Savage. And it's not that we don't like you, Christopher. We're just not going political. So it isn't, we got to keep it innocent and real. And by not getting political is, I think, the best way of doing that. So thank you all for being part of it. Ian, it's good seeing you. I haven't seen you forever. I see you up in my right corner. So great seeing you. Appreciate it and keep on and take care.